second parak. Okay. We're still continuing in focusing on the Sukkah, because there'll be chapters that will talk about the lulav, the arava. We are now just focusing on still in the Sukkah. So we are on in the art scroll 20B, 20B3, the Mishnah. Okay, you want to have it? Hayoshein tachas hamita b'sukkah. So here we have somebody sleeping underneath the bed. If you want to send to the group that we're on, thank you very much. We have somebody sleeping under a bed in a sukkah. So what's the issue? The issue is, he has a sukkah. Everything is fine. He made a beautiful sukkah. There's no issue with the sukkah. We've been learning a lot about the issues in sukkah. When the sukkah is not made properly, the schach is not made properly. The issue with schach, issues with other. If you don't have enough walls, no issue. The sukkah is beautiful, but the problem is the place where he's sleeping. He went underneath the bed. He's sleeping underneath the bed. Usually, good morning, Mr. Batesh. Usually, we sleep on top of a bed. But this guy went to sleep under the bed in the sukkah. Maybe he felt it'll be a little bit more cooler being under the bed, or maybe for whatever reason, maybe there was a space issue in the sukkah, and he decided to sleep underneath the bed. The question is, did he fulfill his mitzvah of sleeping in a sukkah? There's a mitzvah to eat in a sukkah, there's a mitzvah to drink in the sukkah. You technically could drink outside the sukkah, you could have water, you could have soda, you could have orange juice outside the sukkah. But the question is, but let's say there's an obligation. A person's not allowed to sleep outside a sukkah. There are discussion. Why do people today sleep outside a sukkah? The mitzvah is you're supposed to sleep in a sukkah. Same way you can't have a bread meal, outside a sukkah. You're not supposed to sleep outside a sukkah. Okay, there are different answers that are given, different climates. Some answers are climate. Some climates that are very cold. Therefore, we don't sleep in the sukkah because you'll be in pain in such cold areas. That's one answer that's given. But it's something that needs therefore they're in Israel, it's very common, they sleep in a sukkah. Anyone ever spent Sukkot in Israel? We're on 20B3. You'll see that it's very common they sleep in the sukkah. Yes. It could be because it's warmer. And what did you say? The climate's much better, right? And so definitely helpful for that. And they're following the main halacha of sleeping in a sukkah. Mr. Batesh, would you mind moving over one seat to Bunny to the left? Mr. Haber will just take your. He's moving over. There's a Gemara underneath here, a big Gemara if you want. So comes the Tanakama. The first opinion of the Mishnah says that if somebody sleeps under the bed, Mr. Haber, he went under the bed. He does not fulfill his obligation of sukkah, because I'll switch it. If you want to switch that, switch the Gemara around it, because he's not on top of the bed, Mr. Haber. He's underneath the bed, and the way Rashi explains, the tent, his bed that he's sleeping underneath the bed, separates between him and the sukkah. That means he's created some sort of hefsek, separation. You're not supposed to have something between you and the schach. The sukkah we're going to define as the schach. The shelter is supposed to be under the cover of a schach, of the cover, the sukkah cover. That's what you're supposed to be sleeping underneath. But instead of you sleeping under a sukkah cover, you're sleeping under a bed. The bed is not a sukkah. The bed is not a kosher sukkah. You've created some sort of hefsek, just like if a person will go to the mikveh and you will put something on your body that will, you're going to be wearing, if you're wearing your clothing when you go into the mikveh, you've created some sort of separation between you and the waters of the mikveh. So therefore, the same thing, if you go ahead and you go underneath the bed and you sleep underneath the bed, you've created some sort of separation between you and the. So let's say there's a space issue in the sukkah. You don't have, you didn't realize all your friends, all the friends came over that night. They came overnight. They came middle of the night and they come to the sukkah. And the sukkah is a small sukkah. As we said, a sukkah technically, the smallest size sukkah that's kosher is 28 inches by 28 inches. What is that? Yeah, that's not a big sukkah. 28 inches by 20 inches with a height of 40 inches, it's nothing. A couple of feet. Right, they make they're very small, right? So they're very small. So let's say that was the story. So the first opinion in the Mishnah says, Lo yotzi dechavotto. Do not fulfill your obligation of Sukkah if you sleep underneath the bed. However, Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, Nohagim hayinu shehayinu yeshenim tachat hamita b'fnei hazkenim. We were sleeping. Good morning. We were sleeping. We used to sleep in the sukkah underneath the bed in front of the rabbis. There were rabbis there, and the rabbi said nothing. Now, if the rabbis didn't say anything, that means it's kosher. Now, maybe Rabbi Yehuda is recalling when he was young, and maybe when people are young, even young boys, we have to train them to sleep in a sukkah. So even when they're not bar mitzvah, they have to sleep in a sukkah. So let's say kids would want to sleep underneath the bed. The rabbis didn't say nothing. The rabbi said, no problemo. The rabbi's not saying something is a statement. Sometimes you talk by not talking. There's something called shtika toda. When you are, like my Simon says, when you're quiet, it's like you're admitting. There are sometimes by being quiet, it's not admission. It's just sometimes a person says something so ludicrous, I don't need to respond. Or someone says something that's so off, doesn't need a response. So if it's not by being quiet, it's not a admission. But sometimes is when a person didn't say anything ludicrous, he just said something or he did something, and you're quiet. That's an admission that's fine. And the rabbi is not saying anything to these people who are obligated to sit in the sukkah, asleep in the sukkah. And the rabbi said nothing when they were under the bed. Shows you there's no problem. That's Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. There's no problem of what? Of sleeping under the bed. That's what Rabbi Yehuda understands. Now, again, the first opinion, the Mishnah says that it is no good. Sleep under the bed. Amar Rabbi Shimon. Now, Rabbi Shimon is going to support the first opinion in the Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon says, Maise b'tavi avdo shel Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel had a servant. He was a slave, and he was, now it's called an Evet Kanani, let's say. That means let's say he sold himself to a Jewish person, and the way they do it is he goes to the mikveh, he gets a circumcision, and he's obligated in mitzvos like a woman. This man is obligated in mitzvos. This slave, this servant, is obligated in mitzvos like a woman, as long as he's a slave. If he's freed, then he's obligated in all mitzvos like every other man. And the Rabbi Gamliel, who was like the Nasi, the head rabbi of the generation, he had a slave who was very learned, very learned. He picked up everything around, he had such a master, Rabbi Gamliel was his master. He picked everything up from Rabbi Gamliel. You have such a, like magic, you work for the leading rabbi of the generation. Morning, Max. So he's working for leader, and he became a Talmud Chacham. This Tavi became a Talmud Chacham, became a learned person. What was the story with Tavi? Max walks in with the story of Tavi. Perfect timing, right, Max? Ma'aseh b'Tavi avdo shel Rabbi Gamliel. So Yoshein tachat hamita. He was sleeping under the bed in the sukkah. He went to sleep under the bed. Now we know women are exempt from the mitzvah of sukkah. Women do not have an obligation to sleep in a sukkah, to eat in a sukkah. Women, it's a time-bound mitzvah. It's only a certain time of the year is the mitzvah sukkah. But even though they don't have the mitzvah, the obligation to sit in a sukkah, to sleep in a sukkah, they get reward if they go ahead and they go to a sukkah. The general rule is any mitzvah that women are exempt from, if they perform it, they get reward. And if she's Ashkenazi, she'll actually say a bracha on that mitzvah, even though she's not obligated. An Ashkenazi woman goes ahead and has a bread meal in the sukkah. Let's say her husband's not there, husband's at work. She would say bracha, bracha ta Hashem l'chol mamotzi lechem min haaretz l'tzei chol hamoed, bracha ta Hashem l'chol mashek Hashem mitzvotav v'tzivanu leishev b'sukkah. So say that bracha just like a man. When you go to the sukkah, you say hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Let's say when there's no kiddush, when there's a kiddush, then you connect the leishev b'sukkah on the kiddush. There's no kiddush, you say hamotzi lechem min haaretz, and you say hashekta leishev b'sukkah. If a lady, Ashkenaz woman, will take a lulav, a lady is not obligated to take a lulav. It's also time bound. If she takes lulav, she's Ashkenaz, she will say a bracha, just like a man says a bracha. But the Sephardi women, since they're not obligated in the mitzvah, they will not say a bracha on a lulav. They will not say a bracha on the sukkah. But they get a mitzvah. It's a mitzvah to perform, for a lady to sleep, to go sit in a sukkah with her husband. It's a mitzvah for a lady to take a lulav and etrog. It's very common that people give their wives to shake the lulav and etrog. Is that correct? It's very common that people do that, even though they're not obligated. So, Tavi, being a slave, he is not being that he's obligated in mitzvahs like a woman. He's not obligated in the mitzvah of sukkah. He's obligated in the mitzvah of Shabbat. Right? Women are obligated to all the mitzvahs of Shabbat. Women have a mitzvah of Kiddush. Women have a mitzvah of eating 3 meals on Shabbat. Women have all the mitzvahs of Shabbat apply to a woman just like it applies to a man. But regarding the mitzvah of being in a sukkah, there's no obligation for the woman to be in the sukkah. So Tavi, now back in the Mishnah, Omer Shimon Ma'aseh b'Tavi avdo she'Rabbi Gamliel. Tavi, the slave of Rabbi Gamliel, he went ahead and he specifically went under the bed, which is strange. Rabbi Gamliel, being the Nasi, he must have had a big sukkah. There wasn't a space issue. Like everybody's asking, why would people sleep in a sukkah? Maybe kids underneath the bed. Maybe kids like to do things like that. But why is Tavi sleeping underneath the bed? But he did it, and he had a reason why he wanted to make a statement. Sometimes your actions talk. He wanted something that really, look what the Mishnah says. My slave, Shehu Talmud Chacham. He is the Talmud Chacham. He is a learned person. He's a scholar. The Yodea Shavodim Peturim Min HaSukkah. He knows the law. He knows the law that slaves are exempt from sukkah because of the time-bound mitzvah. Lefikach, that's why Yoshenu Tachat HaMitah. It doesn't bother him to go under the bed. The reason on the bed is because since he has no mitzvah of sleeping in the sukkah, of sleeping under the bed. If he would have had a mitzvah bed, but the reason, because he knows there's no, listen, I don't go underneath the bed. I, Rabbi Gamliel, don't go underneath the bed. Why is he going underneath the bed? He follows what I do. The reason is because I am obligated in the sukkah. I don't go underneath the bed. But he who's not obligated in the sukkah, he will go underneath the bed. And maybe he's teaching the world that only I could go underneath the bed. Only I, because I'm not obligated in Sukkah. But everybody else who's obligated in Sukkah, you cannot go underneath the bed. And maybe Tavi, by doing this, so to speak, strange thing, you can ask Tavi, why are you doing this? Why are you going underneath the bed? So he'll tell you, because I'm not obligated in Sukkah. I want everybody to know I'm not obligated in Sukkah. I'm going underneath the bed to teach everybody a lesson. Because really, you would say, why shouldn't he go on top of the bed? Why shouldn't he do something which is the more common thing? And also, he would definitely get credit for the mitzvah. He would get a credit, even if he's not obligated. So I would say he wants to show the world that he's exempt from Sukkah. And when you're exempt from Sukkah, so therefore I'm sleeping underneath the bed to show you that you do not fulfill the mitzvah by sleeping underneath the bed. Let's see. Now, so why, since he's exempt from the Sukkah, so they suggest a different idea. They suggest, why did he sleep underneath the bed? Why didn't he go sleep in the house? Not obligated in Sukkah, sleep in the house. He wanted to hear whatever the rabbis were saying in the Sukkah. Rabbi Gamliel was sleeping in the Sukkah. The rabbis were in the Sukkah. So he wanted to sleep there. He wanted to be around the rabbis. And even just to connect, there's a mitzvah to connect with Torah scholars. And, if you eat with them, if you have an opportunity to eat with them, talk with them, do business with them, sleep in the same room with them, but you'll connect with them. You'll observe their practices. You'll learn from them. That's the idea. Everybody learns from everybody. Everyone's influenced from everybody else. So maybe sleeping in the Sukkah, being in their proximity, I'm next to them. So that's now, and some want to say that maybe his reason why he slept under the bed is to give more, being that he's not obligated in Sukkah, to give more space for the rest of the people in Sukkah. What do you think? Give more space for everybody else. He sleeps underneath the bed. I didn't take up any space. I'm underneath the bed. Today's day, space is a commodity, right? What did you say, Mr. Patel? What? He doesn't get him. Right, he's not obligated anyways, because really, he's not obligated, but what if he want to go and bring himself into the mitzvah? Meaning, like, story on the Sukkah, I once went upstate for Sukkah, and a friend of mine said, Rabbi Friedman, I met a friend from maybe want to say a Dvar Torah in the Sukkah. Say a Dvar Torah in the Sukkah, Shir Torah. He said, you know what? He was there, this guy was there with his wife. And the Sukkah, the schach of the Sukkah wasn't good. And she was sitting on the side that wasn't kosher. And your wife is not obligated to sit in the Sukkah, but she gets a mitzvah, should move over to the side where no room. That was a Dvar Torah. So she said, got it, Mr. Haber? I said, she come up, let her get credit, let her get it. People have a Sukkah. Some people have a Sukkah right next to the house, right? And the lady's not, lady doesn't have to sit in the Sukkah. But if she goes into the Sukkah, she gets a mitzvah. 100%. She's not obligated. There's no obligation. But she gets a mitzvah. So therefore, she's volunteering to do a mitzvah that she's not obligated to do. The fact that a woman wants to be involved in a mitzvah that she doesn't have, it's a love of mitzvah, and she's going to get a lot of she's going to get stuff. She's going to get great things as a result of being of sitting in the Sukkah. There's a lot of benefits a lot of spiritual benefits. He wants us to feel like we're back in the Sukkah, right? So we're in the Sukkah. That's a compliment to you, Max. So the Gemara says, and if anybody's sleeping, they wake up. See, that's also, we're talking about sleeping, and no one's sleeping in the Sukkah. We're talking about sleeping in the Sukkah. Okay, so the Gemara says, therefore he sleeps, that's why he's sleeping in the bed. Okay. Ulafi darkein. So if there's now we understand why there's a purpose why he's sleeping under the bed, either to save space for the rabbis, and with to give space for rabbis, or maybe I'm suggesting to teach this law. He wants everybody to teach the law to the people that only a servant has an allowance to sleep under the bed, but nobody else. I mean, everybody, right? They all knew that he was a servant, but everybody else has obligation, cannot sleep under the bed. So Rabbi Shimon says that even though Rabbi Gamliel did not say openly that you can't sleep under the bed, a person sleeps under the bed does not fulfill his obligation of and I think it's very practical for children. Sometimes children see a nice space, they want to go underneath. If a child who's obligated, a boy who's obligated in Sukkah, can't sleep under the bed in the Sukkah, he has to sleep on top. So what does mean Lefit Darkeinu? That means even though Rabbi Gamliel did not say openly you can't sleep under the bed, Rabbi Gamliel just made a statement. Look, everybody, look at Tavi, my slave. Look, he's a Torah scholar. That's why he's sleeping under the bed. But obviously, the implication is that only a person like that can sleep under the bed because he's exempt from the mitzvot, and therefore he doesn't have an obligation to sleep on top, above. Okay, that is the Mishnah. Now comes the Gemara. The job of the Gemara is to analyze the Mishnah and to clarify points of the Mishnah. Okay, give more details. So, because the Tana of the Mishnah always talks very concise. The Mishnah is always very short. Doesn't go into much detail. The Gemara says, "V'haleka asara." The Gemara says, "But what do you mean? There's no 10 tfachim." That means generally the Gemara's understanding, the general bed, the height of a bed is not 40 inches off the ground. Most beds, how much space you have from the bottom of your bed to the ground? How many inches? From the bottom of the bed, you have a few inches, almost nothing. 6 inches, maybe 6 inches, empty space. And the Gemara's understanding that in order for something to be considered a real interruption, to separate you from the schach, you have to be under some other type of structure. The fact if I go under, let's say I have a bed that's 12 inches off the ground, right? From the bottom of the bed to the ground is 12 inches, or even let's say 24 inches. Since the height of the bed and the ground is not such a large, so we don't look at that as a separate tent, a separate structure that I'm under a separate thing. If the item has a certain height, has a 40-inch height or something like that, whatever the height of 10 tvachim is, so then you can look at it as an independent structure. I'm underneath some other entity within a larger entity, and therefore, so to speak, it negates. We don't look at it like I'm in the sukkah. But when the bottom of the bed to the ground is not such a large structure, we don't look at it that if it's not so high up, so it doesn't form a high tent, its own 40-inch shelter to me. So we don't look at that as a separate entity. At the end, am I in a sukkah or am I not in a sukkah? I'm underneath the bed. But where's the bed? The bed's in the sukkah. So in order for it to say that I'm not in a sukkah, It has to be that the bed is considered, it's in a way that it's going to somehow negate the sukkah, the schach of the sukkah. I don't know the sukkah, right? But you know what? If you very good. If I put a blanket over my head and I'm in the sukkah, we're not going to say because I have a blanket over my head, I'm not sleeping in the sukkah, even though I'm under the cover of the blanket. Some people like to sleep with a blanket. I don't recommend to sleep blanket over your head. Some people sleep with a blanket over their head. So you're going to tell me you're not in the sukkah? You have a blanket over your head? You're still in the sukkah. That's not going to negate you. It's not going to say that you're not in the sukkah, Adam, because you have a blanket over your head. So that's what the Gemara is asking, that the bed, if the bed is not a nice height from the bottom of the bed, the fact that I'm underneath the bed is not, the Gemara is suggesting that it's not enough to separate me to say that I'm not in the sukkah, that it's like this other structure negates the bigger structure that I'm in. But that's why the Gemara said, Targuma Shmuel b'mita asara. We're talking about a bed that is actually 10 tfachim off the ground. That means the height of the bed, the bottom of the bed comes, let's say, around 40 inches high. And if I'm underneath that, since that in itself as a structure has a height of 10, underneath that, that type of structure will separate between that. If it's that level of different amount, and therefore that will interrupt, and therefore your question. But you don't get credit for sleeping in sukkah. What's the case? The case is if you're underneath a bed, some sort of other canopy, which is 10 tfachim high, which has a will separate between you and the schach. Tanan is going to try the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda said in our Mishnah that it was not a problem to sleep under the bed. He held that the bed is not considered an interruption. It's not considered its independent tent that removes you from sleeping under the schach. That was Rabbi Yehuda's opinion. And we'll see tomorrow more about, we're going to go into that opinion of Rabbi Yehuda. Stay tuned tomorrow. It's going to be a fascinating Gemara coming up tomorrow. So beautiful crowd today. And we want to welcome Bunny to the class. And thank you.